The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin, but we don't know what these UAP are.
Se non sono extraterrestri, significa che sono terrestri? Oggi arriviamo alla prima destinazione di questo lungo viaggio, iniziato a febbraio del 2023, su questo canale. Oggi cerchiamo di rispondere a una delle domande più importanti sull'argomento. Da dove provengono gli UFO e le intelligenze non umane? Ascolteremo teorie e ipotesi dei protagonisti della disclosure che abbiamo avuto modo di conoscere dai video precedenti, ma anche da scienziati che sentiamo per la prima volta. Se non sapete chi è Lou Elizondo e quanto sia autorevole, vi consigliamo di vedere i nostri episodi numero 1 e 2, dove spieghiamo tutto su Lou Elizondo, per capire meglio come siamo arrivati a questo punto. Questo video è il frutto di mesi e mesi di analisi che abbiamo potuto realizzare grazie alla disclosure. Se ci fosse una gara su chi per prima spiega in Italia la provenienza degli UFO e delle intelligenze non umane, questo video sarebbe il nostro candidato. Questa è la prima parte di 2 puntate sulla provenienza delle intelligenze non umane. Cercheremo di far uscire gli episodi ad un giorno di distanza l'uno dall'altro, in modo da non perdere il filo del discorso. Noi non ci siamo praticamente mai esposti traendo conclusioni, ma oggi ci proviamo e voi potrete farlo insieme a noi, perché vi forniremo come al solito tutto il materiale per trarre le stesse conclusioni. E se le nostre speculazioni fossero errate, cosa possibile, perché sono appunto speculazioni, abbiamo comunque imparato moltissimo dalle testimonianze di oggi. All'inizio dell'episodio abbiamo chiaramente sentito il direttore della NASA che ha detto:
The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin.
Ma senza argomentare su come sono arrivati a questa conclusione, alla faccia del metodo scientifico. Tant'è che alla fine del video della NASA, quando hanno risposto alle domande, la prima domanda era proprio su questo argomento, ma il direttore della NASA ha semplicemente riletto la risposta originale. Insomma, non è stato in grado di rispondere alla domanda: grazie a cosa dite che non sono extraterrestri? E comunque, se non sono extraterrestri, significa che sono terrestri. Lou Elizondo ha spiegato questo concetto molte volte e oggi le sentiamo quasi tutte.
These flaming Roman shields in the sky that would follow them from battle space to battle space. So it is quite possible we are dealing with something that could be potentially, not necessarily even from outer space. Believe it or not, it could be from right here. It could be right from this planet, and we're just now at a point where technologically we're beginning to interact with it.
Questo è il tema principale di tutte le interviste di Lou Elizondo, cioè potrebbe essere un fenomeno terrestre presente da sempre sulla Terra o comunque da prima di noi.
I'll give you another case in point. Up until very recently, the last 100 years or so, we believed as a species there were only 2 types of kingdoms of living organisms, and that was animal and plant. And then about 150 years ago, we realized that fungi was its own kingdom of life form. And about 100 years ago, we realized there were these little microorganisms that someone famously screamed, little beasties, little beasties. And there's a whole another kingdom of life form that has been invisible to us since we've been Homo sapiens sapien. And we just now realize, and by the way, the biomass of that one kingdom alone outweighs the total biomass of the animal and plant kingdom put together. And it's been completely invisible to us. So we have to be very careful going down that road when we say, well, if it's not ours and if it's not from Earth, it must be from outer space. It could be, but there's other options as well.
Lou Elizondo ha raccontato la storia dello scienziato olandese Antoine van Leeuwenhoek, che alla fine del 1670 guardò al microscopio una goccia d'acqua e trovò un mondo intero. Era minuscolo, era strano, era pieno di strani tipi di corpi e viveva invisibilmente intorno a noi. Gli esseri umani dovevano essere il centro e lo scopo del mondo, e questi animaletti, chiamati da lui animalculi, non sembravano avere alcun effetto, visibile o meno, sulla nostra esistenza. Quindi perché erano qui? Ora sappiamo che questi animaletti sono microbi e che in realtà governano il nostro mondo, ci fanno ammalare, ci mantengono in salute, decompongono i nostri rifiuti rifiuti, alimentano la parte inferiore della nostra catena alimentare e producono il nostro ossigeno. Il fatto che l'uomo li abbia sempre ignorati, almeno fino al 1670, non ha influito sulla loro importanza. Il concetto, tra l'altro, sembra essere proposto almeno fin dal 30 a.C., come dimostra questa traduzione dei Rerum Rusticarum di Marco Varrone. Si badi che sono terreni paludosi, sia per le ragioni dette sopra, sia perché vi si riproducono alcuni animali minuscoli, invisibili all'occhio, che, trasportati dall'aria, raggiungono l'interno del corpo attraverso la bocca e il naso, e causano malattie di cui è difficile liberarsi. Lou Elizondo ha anche spiegato i regni in biologia. Il regno è uno di quei livelli gerarchici di classificazione utilizzati per organizzare la diversità della vita sulla Terra. È uno dei livelli all'interno della tassonomia biologica situato al di sotto del dominio e al di sopra del filum. Il concetto di regno è parte integrante della nomenclatura binomiale di Linneo, che è stata una delle prime forme sistematiche di classificazione biologica. Un regno rappresenta un insieme di organismi che condividono caratteristiche simili e che si collocano in una categoria più ampia rispetto a quella dei livelli di classificazione inferiori, come filum, classe, ordine, famiglia, genere e specie. Questi regni sono utilizzati per organizzare diversi tipi di organismi in gruppi più ampi sulla base delle loro somiglianze fondamentali. Regno Animalia, che include tutti gli animali. Gli animali sono organismi multicellulari eterotrofi, quindi si nutrono, e gli umani fanno parte di questo regno. Il regno dei funghi. Questo regno comprende funghi come muffe, lieviti, funghi pluricellulari, anche i funghi sono eterotrofi. Il regno delle piante, che rappresenta tutte le piante, inclusi gli organismi terrestri e alcune piante marine. Le piante sono fotosintetiche e autotrofe e hanno pareti cellulari di cellulosa. Il regno cromista. Questo regno include organismi unicellulari e multicellulari con cloroplasti contenenti pigmenti diversi da quelli delle piante, come le alghe brune e le diatomee. Il regno dei protozoi comprende una vasta gamma di organismi unicellulari eucarioti, spesso mobili. Questi organismi includono amebe, ciliati, flagellati. Il regno batteria. Questo regno rappresenta i batteri. I batteri sono organismi procarioti, unicellulari e hanno pareti cellulari diverse da quelle delle piante. E per ultimo il regno archea. Gli archea sono un altro gruppo di organismi procarioti, simili ai batteri, ma con differenze fondamentali nella loro biochimica e genetica. Possono essere trovati in ambienti estremi, come sorgenti termali e laghi salati. Questi 7 regni rappresentano una classificazione moderna della diversità della vita rispetto ai 3 regni del 1894. Tuttavia, è importante notare che la classificazione biologica è un campo in continua evoluzione e i tempi di classificazione possono variare in base alle scoperte scientifiche più recenti. Ed è proprio questo il concetto che ci vuole far passare Lou Elizondo, che un giorno in questa tabella ci sarà un nuovo regno.
There are all sorts of options in between. Could they be from outer space? Sure. Could they be from here? Sure. Could these things be interdimensional? I don't mean woo-woo interdimensional. I mean from a quantum physics perspective. We now know that there are other dimensions of the universe and in reality. Could these things be from from here, but not from a slightly different dimension? Or are these things as natural to Earth as we are? And they've been here all along, and we're just now at the point where technologically we're beginning to able to interact with them. Maybe they're from under the ocean. We really don't know, and there's a lot of different options. And right now, it's anyone's guess. There's a lot of theories out there, but quite frankly, we just don't know yet. And so, I would encourage you as we continue to explore this incredible enigma, try to force yourself, you and your friends and colleagues and classmates, to always think outside the box. Always remember there's other options. When we as human beings, everything we do is binary. So I ask you, how are you doing today? Are you good? Are you bad? Are you go up or do you go down? Are you feeling sad or are you happy? Is it black? Is it white? Is it good or bad? That's how we look at things, because that is our nature. But nature herself doesn't operate that way. She operates in diagonals. She operates in fractals. She operates in anything but extreme yes or no, binary left or right moves. Think about it, for example, how inefficient it would be if you had to drive to school every day and the only thing you were allowed to do was make a series of left or right hand turns. You could never go straight. You could never go in diagonals. It would take you a very long time to get to school. Well, intellectually, that's kind of how we think, isn't it? We tend to think in either this or that. It can only be this way or that way. But life is not so simple. Neither is nature. There's a lot of in betweens. And what I tell people sometimes when you come to a cliff, what do? And most people say, well, I go left or I go right. Oh, okay. But there's other options. You can go backwards. You can stay right there. Even believe it or not, no decision is still a decision, right? So anyways, I guess my point being is that we don't really know. When you say extraterrestrial or foreign adversarial, all are possible, but there's also other options as well.
Given the clues Lou, DeLong, and others have been laying down, it seems like we're dealing with crypto-terrestrials, not necessarily aliens. Is this what Admiral Byrd found during Operation High Jump?
It's absolutely possible that this is something that's been on this planet for a very long time, and it's just as natural to Earth as we are. It could very well be its own. This is crazy as it may sound, could be its own animal kingdom. Just like the hidden world of protozoa and whatnot, of the microorganisms in that animal kingdom that was invisible to us until just a couple hundred years ago. Could be. The likelihood of it, I don't really know, but it's it is a possibility. You can't say no.
When we say extraterrestrial, people think little green men from Mars, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, there's a lot more to the universe. There's extraterrestrial, there's extra-dimensional, there's all sorts of possibilities that could exist. In fact, every time we try to define what life is, life always defies our definition.
Right.
Okay. There was a time where we thought all life was contained to synthetic processes, photosynthesis, right?
Right.
It derives its energy from the sun and ultimately, gets trickled down to larger life forms. When in reality, we now understand there are life forms that survive off of chemosynthesis.
Yes.
Completely different from photosynthesis, right? Every time we define life as, let's say, having DNA, well, now you have things like a virus that has RNA, right? But it replicates and does everything that a living thing does, but it has no DNA.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful when we say something is extraterrestrial. What if it turns out that we ourselves are quote unquote extraterrestrial? Maybe what created us in the early days of life and amino acids were brought in from a comet.
Yeah, maybe a hybrid. We're hybrids.
I mean, maybe or it's as natural. Life in the universe is as natural as we are.
Yeah.
Maybe it's bountiful. Maybe it's everywhere. I mean, if you want to know if there's life in the universe, just look at this tiny little rock we call Earth. It's everywhere. It's miles under the Arctic ice. It's in thousands of feet up in the highest mountains, in our atmosphere. It's in our body. There's life forms inside life forms. How crazy is that? Life can exist inside other life.
Yes.
Right? And so, is it possible there's something called extraterrestrial life? Well, I think statistically there's a probably really good chance, yes, but we have to think even beyond that, because we're looking at this question from current paradigms, and I'm not sure we can.
No.
Our current paradigm is if it's not from here, it must be from up there. Okay, but maybe there's other alternatives too. What if life developed on this planet just as naturally as you and I did, but it developed from a completely different tree, right? And what we are seeing is just as natural as you and me. We're just now at the point where technologically we can interact with it. It's always been here,
right?
Possibly,
right?
What if it's from under the oceans? What if it's from outer space? There's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah.
And so we have to be very careful not to be tempted to prematurely jump to that conclusion. Say, oh, if it's not here, it's extraterrestrial. Okay, well, that's one option, could be, but there's also other options.
And yet we know the reality is that, for example, let's just take vision, is a very narrow slice, we call the electro-optical spectrum, right? A very narrow band within the greater electromagnetic spectrum. This phone, this silly little phone that, really isn't so smart, can perceive the world through things such as GPS and cell phone signals and AM and FM. To us, we can't, and yet this reality is right in front of your face every single day, and we know it's real because it works, right? And yet it remains hidden. So 99.9% of the known universe is beyond our ability to even perceive. And then you have a scale issue, right? As a human being, and you look around all around you, around the known universe, you have roughly 90 some billion light years of the visible universe from end to end, and we're kind of stuck in the middle. Now think about that, billions and billions of light years. It's kind of a hard number to conceive, and as infinitesimally small as we may be in that, Ross, it's important to know that there's an equal scale-wise equal amount of volume of universe inside every single human being. If you look at an atom, which is 1 × 10⁻26 in size, compared to the human being, well, we're the universe. And so we fit precariously right in the middle of the scale of the known universe that we have, both up and down. And yet we can only perceive or interact with anything that's just 1 degree order of magnitude above or below. Everything else remains invisible, unknown, a mystery to us, right? Things like dark energy and dark matter, which, by the way, compose of, the majority of the known universe. And so your question is very valid. Are we even capable as a species of knowing the complete truth? I don't know. I don't think we're there yet. I mean, we don't even know ourselves as a species, as a person, right? We need help. A lot of us have to go talk to a therapist to try to work out some of these things that we have going on in our brains, because frankly, we don't even understand our own emotions, let alone each other's emotions, right? Which is maybe why we go to war.
So then what does define the essence of what it means to be human? And I would submit to you is that we don't really know yet. And what if it turns out that at some point we find an ancestor that is really the link between us and our past? Is it possible that the definition of being a human being is constantly evolving? I would submit to you that may very well be the case, and that being human isn't necessarily being this. Being human is something far more profound, far more existential, something that is beyond our current comprehension and reasoning. I think if it turns out that we are not alone in the universe, maybe there's a lot of things like us that we can learn from. Imagine learning 1 million years worth of human evolution and lessons within months. Imagine if there was an advanced civilization, an entity that came down, and all of a sudden now we realize that our current understanding of the universe is certainly not comprehensive. And maybe we can learn a lot, and maybe we can learn to be better than the human beings we are now to achieve where we should be, instead of a lot of us fighting and looking at the 10% differences that we have as a species. Maybe we learn to focus on the 90% that we have in common instead. And maybe we learn that national boundaries and socioeconomic boundaries aren't necessary. Because if you look at a map and you take away all the lines and the national boundaries, you realize very quickly we're all connected. We're all living on the same little rock together. Yeah. Is it possible that we can learn to be more than human from something else? I think it's possible, certainly.
Oggi gli scienziati cercano microbi extraterrestri nei geyser di acqua ghiacciata che fuoriescono da Encelado e nell'oceano che scorre sotto la crosta di ghiaccio di Europa. Cercano indizi che indichino che un tempo degli esseri hanno sfiorato le rocce di Marte. I telescopi scrutano le atmosfere di esopianeti lontani alla ricerca di segni di vita, ma forse questi sforzi sono troppo lontani. Se più linee di vita fossero sorte sulla Terra e si fossero evolute separatamente dai nostri antichi antenati, potremmo scoprire la biologia aliena senza lasciare questo pianeta. Gli scienziati chiamano questi ipotetici ospiti la Biosfera Ombra, in inglese Shadow Biosphere. Se si trovasse una biosfera ombra, sarebbe la prova che la vita non è un incidente statistico che si verifica una sola volta nell'universo. Se la biologia può accadere 2 volte su un pianeta, deve essere accaduta innumerevoli volte su innumerevoli altri pianeti. Ma la maggior parte dei nostri metodi scientifici non è in grado di scoprire una biosfera ombra. E questo è un problema, dice Carol Cleland, l'ideatrice del termine e la sua maggiore sostenitrice. La Cleland, che lavora presso il Centro di Astrobiologia dell'Università del Colorado Boulder, afferma che l'idea è semplice. Sulla Terra potremo coabitare con forme di vita microbiche che hanno una biochimica completamente diversa da quella condivisa dalla vita come la conosciamo attualmente. Secondo lei, la desert varnish, o vernice del deserto in italiano, potrebbe essere la manifestazione di un mondo biologico alternativo e invisibile. È un'idea che colpisce, ma una biosfera alternativa alla nostra sarebbe più di una semplice curiosità scientifica. È di importanza cruciale perché la sua esistenza aumenterebbe notevolmente le aspettative di trovare vita altrove nel cosmo, come ha detto Paul Davis dell'Arizona State University. Se la vita è nata più di una volta sulla Terra, potremmo essere praticamente certi che l'universo ne pullula. Carol Cleland, in collaborazione con la collega dell'università Shelley Copley, ha delineato la sua versione della Biosfera Ombra in un articolo pubblicato nel 2006 sull'International Journal of Astrobiology. Anche altri astrobiologi hanno proposto idee in tal senso. Tra questi, Chris McKay, che lavora presso il centro di ricerca Ames della NASA in California, e Paul Davis, che ha presentato la sua visione di questa zona di vita alternativa in un articolo pubblicato su Astrobiology nel 2005. Voi direte, ok, ma gli scienziati parlano di vita microbica, e inoltre queste sono ipotesi. Ma sapete chi è che sposa queste ipotesi? Tanto da parlarne sul loro sito? La Northrop. Chi è la Northrop? Northrop Grumman Corporation. È una multinazionale americana di tecnologie aerospaziali e della difesa, con 95.000 dipendenti e un fatturato annuo superiore ai 30 miliardi di dollari. È uno dei maggiori produttori di armi e fornitori di tecnologia militare al mondo. L'azienda è la numero 101 della lista Fortune 500 del 2022, delle più grandi società americane. In pratica è una delle tante aziende della difesa americana citate dai protagonisti della Disclosure, quelle che potrebbero aver lavorato al reverse engineering delle astronavi precipitate descritte da David Grush. Sentiamo adesso la professoressa Sarah Walker, astrobiologa e fisica teorica, che ci parla della Biosfera Ombra.
So we think about the origin of life as something that happened on Earth, say, almost 4 billion years ago, because we have evidence of life emerging very early on our planet. And then an origin of life event, quote unquote, a singular event, whatever that was, happened. And then all life on Earth that we know is a descendant of that particular event in our universe, right? And so, but we don't have any idea one way or the other if the original life is happening repeatedly, and maybe it's just not taking off because life is already established. That's an argument that people will make. Or maybe there are alternative forms of life on Earth that we don't even recognize. So this is the idea of a shadow biosphere, that there actually might just be completely other life on Earth, but it's so alien that we don't even know what it is.
But you've also earlier in the conversation mentioned the shadow biosphere. So is it possible that we have weird life here on Earth that we're just not, like, even in a high assembly formulation of life, that we're just not paying attention to, we're blind to? Like life we're potentially able to detect, but we're blind to. And maybe you could say, what is the shadow biosphere?
Sure. Yeah, the shadow biosphere is this idea that there might have been other original life events that happened on Earth that were independent from the original life event that led to us and all of the life that we know on Earth. And therefore, there could be aliens, in the sense they have a different origin event, living among us. And it was proposed by a number of people, but one of them was Paul Davies, that I mentioned earlier, is my mentor. And he has a really cute way of saying that aliens could be right under our noses or even in our noses. With a British accent, it sounds better. But anyway, so the idea is, like, it could literally be anywhere around us. And if you think actually about the discovery of like viruses and bacteria, for a long time they were kind of a shadow biosphere. It was life that was around us but invisible. But this takes it a little bit further and saying that, all of those examples, viruses, bacteria, and everything that we've discovered so far has this common ancestry, and the last universal common ancestor of life on Earth. So maybe there was a different origin event, and that life is weirder still and might be among us, and we could find it. We don't have to go out into the stars to look for aliens, just here on Earth. Life does seem to have planetary scale organization that's consistent even with some of the patterns that we see at the individual scale. So if you think life is a planetary scale phenomena, and the chemistry of life has to be sort of it's not, an individual is not necessarily the fundamental unit of life, right? The fundamental unit of life is these informational lineages, and they're kind of, they intersect over spatial scales. So everything on Earth is kind of related by that common causal history.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me, based on the way I think about the physics and also some of the stuff that my group has done, to really think that there could be evidence or there could be a second sample of life on Earth. But I think there are ways that we need to be more concrete about that. And I have thought a little bit about like you can represent the chemistry in an individual cell as a network. And then those networks, something my group has shown, actually scale with the same properties. So ecosystems have the same properties as individuals as planetary scale. And then you could imagine if you had alien chemistry intermixed in there, that scaling would be broken. So if there's some robustness property or something associated to it, and you get alien chemistry in there, it just breaks everything. And you don't have a planetary ecosystem functioning and individuals functioning across all these scales. So I guess what I'm arguing is life is not a scale-dependent phenomenon. It's not just cellular life. So if you have a shadow biosphere, it has to be integrated with all of these other scales. And
that would lose the meaning of the word shadow biosphere, I guess.
I think so, yeah. So it's an open question, right? And I think it would tell us a lot. So there has been very minimal effort of people to look for a shadow biosphere.
But then the question, it could be possible that there's like sufficiently distinct planets within one planet, meaning like environments within one planet.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe you can have different Earths on like a planet.
Yeah. Or like if you go deep enough in the crust, maybe there's like a layer where there's no life and then there's suddenly life again. And maybe those, lizard men or whatever they are that people dream about are really down there. I know that's a little flippant, but really, like there could be like chemical cycles deep in the Earth's crust that might be alive and are completely distinct in chemical origin to surface life.
Right, that they wouldn't be interacting with each other.
Yeah, and that's one of the proposals for the shadow biosphere is like sometimes people talk about it as being geologically or geographically distinct, that it might be, you have no life for this region and then a different example. And then sometimes people talk about it being chemically distinct, that the chemistry is sufficiently different that it's completely orthogonal or non-interacting with our chemistry.
It seems to me, at least, the chemistry is a more powerful boundary.
Yes.
Than geographic. It just seems like life finds a way literally to travel.
But there are a lot of features of our universe that are not completely obvious to us, like the fact that this table is made of atoms and that I'm sitting in a gravitational potential well right now. And I guess my point with this is I think life is much less obvious than we think it is. And so it could be in many more forms than we think it is. And I guess this goes back to the point about being open-minded, that we may not know what alien life looks like. It might not even be possible to interact with alien life because maybe something about, our informational lineage, it makes it impossible for information from an alien to be copied to us. Therefore, there's no, so to speak, communication channel. And I don't mean, verbal communication, just it's not in our observational space. There's fundamental questions about why we observe the universe in position rather than momentum, but we also, observe it in terms of certain informational patterns and things. Like that's what our brain constructs. And maybe aliens just interact with a different part of reality than we do. That's wildly speculative, but I think
but it's possible.
It's possible, and I think it's consistent with the physics. So I think the best ways we can ask questions are about life and chemistry, and asking questions about if information is a real physical thing, what would its signatures be in matter? And how do we recognize those? And I think the ones that are most obvious are the ones I've already articulated. You have these objects that seem completely improbable for the universe to produce because the universe doesn't have the design of that object in the laws. Mm-hmm. So therefore, an object had to evolve. We call it evolution, but it had to be produced by the universe that then had all of the possible tasks to make that object.
Are we alone? Is this evidence of extraterrestrial activity or something that's maybe already been here or was here forever and before us, which opens the question of, do we really own this planet? So is it something? Yes, that's a game changer at many levels that, of society. The other answer is just as interesting. It might be depressing. The other answer is we are alone, at least here, and nothing has been here. That's interesting, but it still begs the question, what is it that everybody's seeing?